Coming up this week, several ships in the Royal Caribbean Group family have engine trouble, but Royal Caribbean also have a reason to celebrate taking delivery of the Star of the Seas. Oceania Cruises also takes delivery of its newest ship. There's also clarification on the story from last week about the measles vaccine requirements if you're travelling to Honduras, and we also find out where NCL's Prima and Breakaway are being deployed to after that big announcement last week of so many cruise cancellations. Also looking at the luxury end of cruising and new announcements from Seven Seas about itineraries in the 2027 into 2028 season. Welcome to the Cruise News Roundup, brought to you by the Solo Muster Drill. Royal Caribbean must be feeling that it's a case of déjà vu this past week. Their 22-year-old Serenade of the Seas, which is currently operating Alaska itineraries for the summer season, has had for the past number of weeks been encountering some difficulties with its engine and propulsion. A couple of weeks back, this resulted in a day of scenic cruising in the Inside Passage being skipped for a more direct return route to Vancouver, and on the 7-day itinerary from June 29th to July 6th, sailing was forced to miss Icy Strait Point. And then last Sunday, July 6th, the new 7-day itinerary was due to commence in Vancouver. Now, while the ship set sail as scheduled, it returned to the port 2 hours later, and it remained there for repairs until 6:30 p.m. on Monday the 7th. Guests were required to remain on board while the ship was docked, so did not get the chance to go and further explore Vancouver. As a result of this additional unscheduled time in port in Vancouver, guests missed the first port of call in Sitka. Other ports of call on this week's itinerary, including Juneau, Ketchikan and Prince Rupert Island, also had adjusted port times. Things do now seem to be back on track, as various ship tracking websites showed the location of the ship sailing the Inside Passage between Vancouver Island and the Canadian mainland as scheduled on its final day of scenic cruising yesterday, Saturday, July 12th. There was a worrying situation for passengers and crew on board Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas last weekend, as in the early hours of the morning of July 4th, the ship, which was en route from Cozumel, Mexico, to its current home port in Galveston, Texas, experienced power outages in some areas of the ship. This impacted critical operations. Now, late in the evening of July 3rd, it's reported that the captain began making announcements about the situation and assuring passengers and crew that there was no danger, that the ship was in calm waters and was continuing to make its way towards its scheduled port. The updating announcements continued into the early hours of the morning, and some passengers noted that this actually caused more of a concern and disturbance than the actual situation itself. There were also reports of other minor inconveniences to guest amenities, including air conditioning temporarily not working, and also a limited number of reports of toilets not flushed. Happily for all on board, this did not turn into a poop cruise, and the situation appeared to be resolved by the following morning. Everything was back to working order, enabling all on board to enjoy the 4th of July celebrations, with the ship arriving in Galveston as scheduled on July 5th. And also this week, another ship in the Royal Caribbean family, this time Celebrity Cruises' Celebrity Infinity ship, also experienced significant problems. The ship was on a 7-day round-trip itinerary from Piraeus, Athens, and was docked in Kusadasi, Turkey on Sunday last. The power went out due to a small electrical fire on board. Specialists were brought on board to assess the situation and to undertake repairs, and it was initially thought that the ship would be able to depart by Wednesday and make some of the port calls at the latter end of the schedule. Unfortunately, it remained in Kusadasi until Friday last, sailing directly from there to Piraeus for its scheduled disembarkation yesterday, July 12th. Of the 5 scheduled ports of call, guests did manage to visit Santorini before the ship's arrival in Turkey, but they didn't make the 3 remaining ports in Greece, including Mykonos Island and also Thessaloniki and Kavala on the Greek mainland. Guests were initially offered compensation in the form of onboard credit, varying between $200 and $600, and that was dependent on the stateroom category. And of course, refunds were given for any shore excursions booked through the cruise line at ports that were subsequently missed. Now, as the week wore on and guests reconciled themselves to remaining docked in Kusadasi for several more days, Celebrity Cruises provided further compensation. All guests will receive a 50% refund on the fare paid, and in addition they will also receive a 50% future cruise credit, and that's all in addition to the onboard credit that I've already mentioned. As all facilities and amenities on the ship were in working order, passengers were able to remain comfortably on board. They were also free to come and go in port as they pleased. In addition, in order to assist their wider exploration of Turkey, Celebrity Cruises organised a range of complimentary shore excursions, with there being a total of 7 options for guests to choose from. Despite the ship woes of the Royal Caribbean Group this week, Royal Caribbean itself has had a big reason to celebrate as it officially took delivery of the latest Icon class of ship, the Star of the Seas, on Thursday. A special ceremony was held at the Meyer Turku shipyard in Finland, where the cruise ship has been in construction. It was attended by over 1,250 crew members and their partners, as well as Royal Caribbean Group President Jason Liberty and Royal Caribbean President and CEO Michael Bailey. The delivery ceremony marks the formal transfer of ownership to the cruise line, although work will continue in the coming weeks on the final aspects of the fit-out of the ship. It will then make a transatlantic crossing without any guests before it begins sailing a number of preview sailings in early August. The official inaugural sailing takes place on August 31st. Preview sailings before that are due to the fact that the ship will be ready in advance of the originally scheduled date. Together with its sister ship Icon of the Seas, the Star of the Seas will be the largest cruise ship in the world and will have all of the world-class activities, entertainment and dining options that we now expect from the world's largest cruise ship. Also on Thursday, Oceania Cruises, which is part of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, took delivery of their new ship, the Oceania Allura. This was built in the Fincantieri shipyard in Italy and is the second ship in the Allura class. It's built to accommodate 1,200 guests and was described by Jason Montague, Chief Luxury Officer at Oceania Cruises, as being the most innovative and luxurious ship from the brand, and he said it represents the line's bold vision of what he described as an entirely new generation of luxury travel experiences. The inaugural sailing of the Oceania Allura is on July 18th from Trieste in Italy, and over the entire inaugural season there are a total of 26 itineraries on offer, covering 92 destinations. And for solo cruisers, it's also worth noting that there are 6 solo staterooms on board. And if you're interested in checking out offers from Oceania Cruises, they currently have a special offer on 86 of their sailings. Reservations must be made by July 31st and they will benefit from a free beverage package and also $250 credit per stateroom. And sticking with the theme of luxury cruise brands, if you're in the market for luxury cruising in late 2027 into 2028, you may want to take a look at Regent Seven Seas. This week they announced 234 itineraries for that season, including 5 grand voyages and a 133-night world cruise. Bookings for the new itineraries open on July 23rd. Turning now to a clarification. After a degree of unease and uncertainty last week with the apparent announcement by the Honduran government that visitors arriving by air, land or sea would require a measles vaccination or proof of a negative measles test, it has now been confirmed that this is not the case. While there are vaccination requirements in place for children resident in Honduras and travelling from the country, there are no new requirements being introduced for visitors to the country, so no concerns for cruisers going there. And finally, in an update on last week's news of Norwegian Cruise Lines cancelling a significant number of sailings on the Norwegian Prima and the Norwegian Breakaway in the 2026 into 2027 season, citing redeployment of the ships as the reason for this week they have provided further details on the deployment. It's now emerged that the 2 ships will actually swap home ports. So the Norwegian Breakaway will now be operating from New Orleans between November 8th of 2026 to March 29th of 2027. Norwegian Prima will be operating out of San Juan, Puerto Rico over the same period. Reservations can be made for the new schedules from August 8th. That's it for this week. As always, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed the content or found it useful, please consider hitting the like button. And if you'd like to stay up to date on more cruise news or on my cruising adventures through my travel vlogs, please consider subscribing. Bye for now and enjoy your week.